Welcome to Asynchronous Ceramics A. We're going to see how this is going to work today. I don't know. I think it should be kind of fun. It should work out okay. Today we're starting a new project. I don't have a PowerPoint to show you, but I do have this amazing video that someone sent me, and it kind of sparked the idea for this whole project. So here it is. Check it out. Isn't that awesome? So we're going to use that technique to decorate the surface of your slumped bowl. That is the project we're starting today. So on the next clean page of your notebook, please write, what is this, week 4, day 1. This is your slumped bowl project. There's going to be some new vocabulary that's going to go along with this unit, and then you're going to be beginning the steps of making the project today, because we don't have a lot of time to mess around. So we're just going to jump right in. So first new vocabulary word, please write this down on that next clean page of your notebook, is mold, M-O-L-D, mold. Your mold is this lump of plaster. You have one in your swag bag. Maybe it's big, maybe it's small, maybe it's oval shaped, maybe it's kind of square. But a mold, and this is the definition I want you to write down, is something that you can use repeatedly to shape your clay, because the mold never changes and the clay has plasticity, and the clay can change shape and conform to the shape of the mold. So you could use this mold to make 100 bowls that are all exactly the same, because you use the same mold every single time. So a mold is an object used to shape the clay repetitively. Vocabulary word number 2 is engobe. Engobe is colored clay slip. It's just like the slip that you made in your slip container, except this slip is made from porcelain, which is a really bright white clay. And then I added pigment to it. So your engobe might be black, or your engobe might be blue, or it might be yellow, or it might be pink, or it might be green. There's a lot of different colors of engobe. So it'll be in a little jar in your swag bag, probably in your Ziploc baggie. You don't need it yet, okay? But it's a word I want you to know. Here's my engobe bottle. It is, this one happens to be purple, and this is colored clay slip, engobe. Okay, term number 3, continuous line drawing. You are going to use continuous line drawing for your project, because you're going to be using string and embedding that string in your clay to create an unbroken continuous line. So how you place that string on the surface of your clay is totally up to you, but you're going to be placing that string in one unbroken line. Just like in the video, you saw the guy peeling the string away, and it came away in a satisfying, long, continuous strand. So that's what you're going to be doing as well. So you can draw whatever pictures or designs or patterns you want with the string, but we're not cutting the string until you're totally done adding your design to the clay. So again, to summarize, a continuous line drawing is a pattern that's created by a single line. Every aspect of the drawing is contained within that single line. It does not break at any point. Your fourth and final term for today is resist. So you're going to be using that string of your continuous line drawing to create a resist pattern. So we'll be embedding the string in the clay, in the gray clay that I've given you, and then you're going to be taking your engobe, your colored engobe, and you're going to be painting it over the clay, over the embedded string, and then waiting for the engobe to get leather hard. And then when it's leather hard, that's when you get to peel away the string. And wherever the string was, it will have resisted or blocked the engobe. So wherever your design was, wherever the string was, you're going to be peeling it away and seeing the white of the clay, because those are the areas that will have been resisted by the string. So again, your 4 terms are mold, something used to shape your clay repetitively, engobe, which is colored clay slip, continuous line drawing, which is an unbroken single line design, and resist, which is something used to block the engobe. So the engobe cannot go to that spot. So those are your 4 terms I want you to have in your notes for today. Draw a line under that. Okay, now we're moving on to the steps. So your first step for today is to get out your block of clay. Pan down here so you can see what I'm doing. You're going to get out your block of clay, you're going to get out your mold, you're going to get out your slip container, and you're going to get your paper clip. Okay, you should have a paper clip in your swag bag. You'll need your wire cutter, and you'll need your rolling pin. So somewhere in your bag, in your swag bag, probably not in your Ziploc baggie. Oh, here it is. You'll have a dowel that looks like this. This is your rolling pin. If you have a real rolling pin at your house and you want to use that, that is perfectly fine. But we're going to be rolling a slab of clay today. And so we need some sort of tool to help us make a flat slab of clay. So I'm going to start by getting all this stuff out of the way. I'm going to unwrap my bag of clay. And step number 1 is to cut a 1/2 inch thick chunk of clay off your block. And it can be a little bit more, or it can be a little bit less. It's up to you. It's not super important that it is super precise. We just want a block that's approximately about a 1/2 inch thick. Then seal up your extra clay. For now, you're going to be putting some of the clay that you don't end up using back in that bag, but we just don't want that to dry out. Then you're going to do some wedging. So I'm going to ram's head wedge. I'm going to push the clay away, pull it back, push it away, pull it back. So I'm mixing it, drying it out a little bit, and getting rid of the air bubbles that are in the clay. And I'm making the clay a better consistency. Then, because I want to make this into a flat slab, I am going to take my hand and pre-flatten the clay. So it's back to being about a 1/2 inch thick. Please don't skip the step of wedging though. If you just cut your 1/2 inch thick slab of clay and put it down on your table and start rolling a slab out of it, it's going to be really airy. And we know from that quiz you took last week that air in your clay is bad news. Even if you don't want to fire it, it makes it weak. So we don't want that. We want it strong. So definitely take the time to wedge it. Then pre-flatten your clay. And here's your step number 2. You're going to roll this slab till it's about a 1/4 of an inch thick. And you're going to do that on your little wedging cloth that you have at home. You're going to take your rolling pin that you've got, and you're just going to use kind of your whole hand and wrist to flatten that out. See how I'm using my wrists at some point? Okay, then I'm going to turn the clay 45 degrees, and I'm going to roll it again. Now, if your clay is starting to get kind of sticky, and if it sticks to your rolling pin, that can get kind of annoying. You can try this technique, but if it's sticking a lot, if your clay is really wet, there is another way to make a slab of clay. And actually, I prefer this other way rather than using these dowels that I gave you, but you certainly can use a dowel or a real rolling pin if that's working for you. But here's the way that you can also make a slab of clay that's different from the rolling pin. If you pick up that slab of clay and throw it diagonally away from you, it stretches in the direction that you're throwing it in. So I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to flip the clay like this and throw it away. That was in slow motion. I'm going to do it fast in a second. But I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it so that this edge catches first. It's going to catch and it's going to stretch that way. So I'm going to do it fast and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to throw it and it just stretched that direction. So now if I pick it up and turn it and have a different edge facing forward and throw it away from me, now it's stretched even more. And if I always throw a different edge forward, it's going to stretch my clay really uniformly. I'm always throwing it on my wedging cloth because otherwise it would stick if I'm throwing it on my actual table. And I'm just going to keep kind of doing that until I have a fairly uniform slab of clay. Now the edges are kind of bad, but that's going to be okay because I'm not actually going to end up using this entire slab of clay. Now, one little quick thing I want to show you just to be sure that your slab is consistent, because that's a really important aspect of this project, is that the slab truly is consistent. I'm going to take my paper clip and I bent open one side of my paper clip. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to test the thickness in a few different spots on my slab. So I'm going to stick it through the slab and then mark, kind of pinch on the paper clip with my fingers where the top of the slab is. And when I hold it up, it tells me exactly how thick that slab was right there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, it's a little bit thinner there. I'm going to do the same thing there. Okay, it's a little bit thinner there. And it's thicker here again. So these two spots were kind of thicker. So I'm going to take that rolling pin and I'm going to try and stretch those spots that were a little bit thicker. Okay. And after I roll with my rolling pin, I always want to kind of introduce a little bit of, I want to introduce a little bit of air underneath the slab. So that happened, that just stuck because it touched the tape. And so it was not able to lift off of the tape. So I have a little bit of clay that tore off, but again, not the end of the world because this is the part that I'm going to end up using. Okay, so that was step number 2, to flatten my slab of clay and make it approximately 1/4 of an inch thick uniformly across the board. Okay, for my next step, I need my mold, and I'm going to put the flat side of my mold on top of my slip container. So it's elevated up off the table. Then I'm going to take my slab of clay and I'm going to try and center it on top of my mold as best I can. Now, when it first goes on there, it's going to look terrible, right? It's not going to go on there neatly. It's not going to conform. So now your job, once you have done step number 3 and you've lifted the slab on top of your elevated mold, step number 4 is to gently use your hands, use your entire hand to get the slab to conform. So I'm slowly trying to get the clay to hug the curves of my mold. Now, as I'm doing this, it's wrinkling, it's tearing a little bit, but all of that I don't care about. I'm going to be fixing that in a little bit, so I'm not going to sweat that stuff too much right now. Okay, so now it's hugging the curves a lot better, right? So just trying to kind of turn it and make sure I've got it universally covering that mold. Now I'm going to take my my paper clip and I'm going to use it like a cutting tool. So I'm going to cut with the paper clip going straight into the clay. It's important that you don't let the angle of that paper clip change. It's got to be straight, parallel to your table. And you're going to use that to cut off this excess clay. So I'm trying to maintain that same angle with my paper clip all the way around. If you don't maintain that angle, the lip of your pot or the rim of your pot is going to be really messed up. It's going to have a lot of weird little angles to it. So now I can take off this extra stuff that was just in my way. And because this is way too much clay to waste and let it dry out, I'm going to re-wedge it again. I'm going to put it back inside my good clay bag so that I can use it tomorrow, because you'll need a little bit of extra clay tomorrow. Okay, so now that I'm looking at this, there's some things that are not 100% perfect. So I just flipped it over. There's some areas where I didn't quite trim it quite so nicely. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about that, but I am going to look at this side because it's really, that's the side that's easier for me to deal with right now. And I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to get it a little bit wet. Remember, you have a sponge in your swag bag, in your Ziploc baggie. And I'm just going to work on smoothing this exterior part of my pot. So I still have it on top of my slip container. It is, I don't know, I feel like it's just easier to turn and kind of get underneath things if your clay pot is elevated and your mold is elevated. So I'm just keeping it on there for now. Okay, so that's looking pretty smooth now. So now everything is really plastic right now. It's really, really soft. So it's not safe for me to take the clay off the mold today. I'm gonna let it sit on my mold overnight. And because this mold is made of plaster, which means that it's really airy, it has millions of tiny little air holes in it, it's gonna start to absorb the water out of my clay bowl, my slab that's resting on top of the mold. And it's going to start turning the clay leather hard. And that's good. That's what we want. We want this to get leather hard for tomorrow. So all that I need to do today is I'm just going to take my bag, and I'm not even going to put this in the bag. I'm just going to lay the bag over the top of it so it's kind of 2-ply, double thickness. I'm going to lift the mold off my slip container. I'm going to tuck the edges of my bag under the mold. Got some air trapped in there, so it's kind of poofy. So I'm just going to let it sit like that till tomorrow, okay? So, I forgot to mention one thing. Please take a photo of your clay once it's on the mold so I can see your progress for today. And if you are a kid that's coming to school tomorrow for hybrid, for in-person learning, you are going to take your wrapped up mold and pot, and you're going to put it in a bag or in a box, and you're going to carefully bring it into school. Be cautious with it. Don't swing it around. Don't drop it on the bus. Just be gentle with it, because you will need to move on to the next step in class. So you need to remember to bring your project. If you don't bring your project, you're going to have to start over in class. So each day, if you're hybrid, you're going to be bringing your project back and forth to and from school. You want to do something that's a little bit more challenging and has a little bit more complexity to it and has more of a lip to it. Here's another facet of what you can do. Hang on. Okay, so I just grabbed an additional mold. This one's a little bit of a different size. It's a little taller. And I already have a slab of clay that I've rolled out ready to go. And I'm not going to elevate my mold on top of my slip container. I'm just going to lay it right on the table. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Okay, so just again, to reiterate, this technique I'm about to show you is kind of like an alternative to that first technique. So this is going to be a little bit more challenging for those kids who maybe want a little bit more of a challenge, or maybe to make their bowl a little bit bigger. Okay, so I've got my hands. I've made the slab conform all the way around it. So now what makes this technique different is I'm going to cut the lip of the bowl in a unique design. So the lip is going to have an interesting shape to it. So I really tried to center the slab on top of the mold so I'd have plenty of extra clay going around it. So I'm going to take my paper clip again, and I'm going to cut a lip that has almost kind of like a cloud shape to it. And I'm just kind of making this up as I go. It's going to be kind of asymmetrical. So it's going to bulge out a little bit more on one side than the other. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to kind of universally keep it sort of the same distance from the mold all the way around. So now, almost kind of looks like a flower too, doesn't it? So now this edge has become part of my bowl. When I flip this over, this is going to be really soft and plastic right now, so I would not want you to flip yours over. But when I flip it over, you can see how that's going to become part of my bowl. And then when I embed my string inside the clay, I'm going to have more area to show off my string design, my resist. So now I would need my wood tray. And let's see, I don't have. Okay, so I'm going to put this definitely on my tray because I need to protect that fancy lip that I just cut. And then I'm going to do the same smoothing thing that I did before to try and get all my edges nice and soft, all the wrinkles or cracks or spaces filled in. If by the way, if you have a big tear in your clay as you've been making it conform to the mold, just take a little extra clay and just blend it in like a little Band-Aid, fixing the little owie on the side of your pot. If it's just a tiny little piece of clay that you're blending in, just meld it really well and you won't have to score and slip. All right, so if you do this technique where you give yourself more clay for the lip of your pot, make sure that when you're doing your cutting, the angle of the paper clip is straight up and down, so you get the same edge on your lip all the way around. And you can make that lip be any shape you want. You can have it be jagged like a star. You can have it be bumpy like a cloud. You can have it just be round. If you just want it to be a round, bigger lip on your pot, that's totally fine too. Keep in mind though that the more bumps or the more spikes that you've cut around your pot, the more you're going to have to clean up, because you're going to have to get in between each one of those little bumps or zigzags or whatever kind of shape it is. So just that's why I say that this is a more elaborate technique for people who want to maybe work, challenge themselves a little bit. That's where I would say, just be aware of what you're getting into. If you don't feel like doing this fancy lip, then just do the technique where you elevate it on your slip container and then just cut your lip using the mold, the bottom of the mold, as your guide. Okay, that's perfectly fine too. So then this, I would take a picture of this, I would slide that in a plastic bag, and I would let that get leather hard for tomorrow as well. And if you're bringing this in, if you're hybrid tomorrow, make sure you bring this in a box and keep it protected, cushion it with a bunch of plastic bags around it so it doesn't slide around in the box. And my extra clay, because I don't want to waste it, I'm going to wedge it so that it doesn't, it's less likely to dry out, those little chunks, if you wedge them first and then put them in your bag. Okay, then clean up your workspace. Make sure you submit your photo by 10 p.m. and make sure you take your attendance question by 3 p.m. because I have to enter attendance. Hi. I have to enter attendance by 3 o'clock. So you can't wait for your attendance question till 3. You have to do that now. In fact, go right now. Do the attendance question so that I know you were here. That's it. Message me if you have any questions. I'm available for Google Meets one-on-one this afternoon if you need any help. I think that's it, all that I got for you today. All right. Good luck.